snide, useful, a tad bit nefarious. These were words that described Karma Akabane. Well, at least Gakushu described him that way. Wayan handed Kyo and Seiji the bags of cookies that her aunt told to give them. "I forgot to give these to you guys yesterday," she hummed. "My aunt came over and told me to give them to you both." Kyo started dancing around happily, and as Seiji began to cry tears of joy. "Your aunt is such a peach," he gushed. Wayan chuckled. "Sure." She glanced over to Gakushu, who was quietly sitting at his desk. From her school bag, she pulled out a green cloth that was wrapped around 2 cookies. She breathed a sigh and approached him. She felt eyes on her from female classmates that she knew fangirled over him. "Here." Gakushu looked up at her. "May I ask what this is for?" "No, you cannot." She gently placed the cookies down on his desk. "My aunt made them. If you don't want them, give them to someone else. Just make sure they don't go to waste." With that, she walked back to her desk. That was odd. Gakushu glanced back at her. Nonetheless, he delicately placed the cookies in the shelf underneath his desk for him to get to later. When she sat down, Kyo placed her hands on her shoulders, and she whispered, "What was that about?" Wayan dismissed. "I just owe him for some things. That's all." "Well, you might just have gotten yourself some enemies," Seiji added with his eyes scanning the room. A handful of girls were either glaring daggers at her or sobbing because they didn't have the courage to approach him themselves. Wayan couldn't care less about the girls who all had crushes on Gakushu. In fact, she could easily glare sharp daggers at them if she wanted to. During his free period, Gakushu carried a large stack of thick textbooks. The stack reached his chin. It wasn't heavy, but it was an annoying load. He was making his way to the student council room. "Wayan?" Gakushu grimaced at the voice of his rival. "Karma?" Gakushu stiffened at the sound of his soulmate's curious but relaxed voice. He stopped in his tracks, waiting by a window that was for some reason left open. He hated how a feeling was already bubbling inside of his chest. He was already anticipating the pain in his chest, but more importantly, why did he feel so hesitant to turn at the corner? "I didn't know you had a free period during this time," Wayan hummed. "I'm always wandering the school during mine, so I'm surprised I found you now." "Oh, this isn't my free period." Karma smirked. Skipping?" Wayan chuckled. "Yes, ma'am." Gakushu wasn't one to eavesdrop, but for some reason, whenever it came to Wayan, he felt like he had to. His mouth was going dry, and he suddenly felt petulant. He wasn't too keen on acting on belligerent emotions, but this soulmate situation made him feel otherwise. To him, Karma's and Wayan's interactions were acrimonious and corrosive. Meanwhile, beneath the ever-sent feeling of talking to her crush, Wayan could sense the caustic emotions from nearby. It was different from the other time at Lusette's. This time, she was feeling contagious. She kept glancing behind her, with her eye-colored eyes resting on a frown. Resisting a frown, she knew Gakushu was nearby, and she knew those aberrant emotions all too well. She began to feel the same at the mention of Asano and confession in the same sentence, over and over again. In all honesty, Wayan knew nothing was going to happen with Karma. It was just a small crush, and that the feelings would begin to fade soon. She was not interested in a relationship. In the middle of all of it was Karma. He was unaware of Gakushu's presence. The redhead was focused on the girl in front of him. Unbeknownst to the hair-colored girl, he reciprocated her feelings. However, both of them were good at hiding their crush on each other. Karma knew he had a soulmate of his own, but he had yet to find her. He wasn't one to believe in soulmates. However, if there was someone he had to be tied to, he would have chosen Wayan. He secretly hoped that Hwaein was his soulmate, but the soul-crushing truth was that she wasn't. Hwaein was Gakushu's soulmate, and vice versa. Fate watched from above after tugging on that red string that connected Hwaein and Gakushu's pinkies. They munched on popcorn with a knowing look. They glanced to Karma's red string, which trailed behind him and in the opposite direction of Hwaein. While they were genuinely trying to help the soulmate duo, they were also enjoying the drama of it all. It was entertaining to them. Fate, may I ask how my students are? They're doing great. Fate smiled at the spirit that approached them. As a matter of fact, would you like to watch them over for a bit? Fate passed him popcorn as he took a seat beside them. Of course. Gakushu wanted to step out and proceed to the student council room, but he just froze on the spot. His arms were heavy from the textbooks he carried, but the weight of having a soulmate on his shoulders felt heavier. Say, let's grab something to eat after school, Karma offered. We can invite Isogai and Kunigi Kaze if you want. Karma was trying to play his cards right. He knew that Hwaein and Isogai were fairly close and lived in the same neighborhood growing up. Hwaein felt the bitter feeling grow. She was conflicted. She knew she could only say no because she had work after school. She wanted to say yes, since she knew Gakushu could hear. Did she want to save him from the aching, or did she want to make him feel the same pain she would feel? She felt cruel for even considering it, but she was still human. She couldn't be nice all the time. Gakushu's nails dug into the bottom of his stacked textbooks. He felt pathetic and frustrated, but all of his nerves were depending on Hwaein to say no. Fate snickered. Watch this. The spirit's expression turned into a look of curiosity. Suddenly, in the corner of his eye, Gakushu spotted a white figure coming at him through the window. He casually leaned back, his face narrowly dodging the baseball. However, the baseball hit hard enough to knock the top book off his stack. Gakushu's eyes widened as he tried to catch it, but failed. The book fell onto the cold floor with a loud smack that resonated through the entire hallway. This alerted both Karma and Hwaein. Fate-san, you could have killed him! I knew he'd dodge. Gakushu's lips parted slightly, as if he was exasperated by what had just happened. He watched as the baseball rolled around. Hwaein poked her head from around the corner. Are you all right? Yes, why wouldn't I be? He sighed. Damn, maybe a couple more inches and you would have gotten a black eye. Karma devilishly laughed, staring at the baseball on the floor. Geez, Karma, Hwaein deadpanned as she picked up the fallen textbook. Where did it even come from? She looked out the window to see the baseball club members below. Hey! The boys looked up at her, all tensing. This school has a baseball field for a reason, she shouted, dropping the baseball down to them. She followed up with sticking her middle finger at them. Gakushu did not expect for her to take half of the stacks. Nonetheless, his arms felt lighter. What do you think you're doing? He scowled. I told you. Hwaein plainly looked him in the eyes. If you need help, just say something. I don't need help, Gakushu objected. Right. Hwaein breathed a sigh, but looked at Karma. I have work after school. Karma didn't like how Gakushu's face morphed into a triumphant expression. Next time, okay? Hwaein gave him a closed-eyed smile. Gakushu's expression faded when he felt a painful thump. Karma smirked and walked off with a wave. Keep your word. Hwaein's smile turned into a frown when he disappeared. As she looked back to Gakushu, her face became indifferent. Where are you taking these? You could have said yes. What? Hwaein scowled. Gakushu coldly walked past her. Whatever you do with other people is none of my business. Hwaein scoffed. Don't be like that. You obviously wanted to say yes. Then maybe I should have, since you're being so rude about it. Gakushu stiffened and glanced over his shoulder. Sharp eye-colored met cold amethyst. I know how it feels. Hwaein mumbled. And to be honest, I was considering taking him up on the offer just to make you feel the same. Why didn't you? He harshly asked. I realized that no one deserves to feel that way. She answered, So please, don't be like that. Gakushu's gaze hardened. Don't take pity on me. I'm not. He whipped back around. I was taking you to the student council room. Okay, she hummed in response, following after him. Drama queen. She rolled her eyes. The two walked in silence. Instead of walking side by side, Hwayun trailed behind him. She had never been to the student council room before. In truth, she used to purposefully avoid the room, knowing that Gakushu was president. Did you like the cookies? She asked in a quiet whisper. I'm sorry? Gakushu almost couldn't hear her. Did you like the cookies? She repeated a bit louder. I haven't tried them yet, he answered. I'm not one for sweets. Oh, okay. She trailed off. However, I don't believe I said thank you, he said. Hwayun looked to her right, staring out the window. You really don't have to. She directed her attention to his back. A scowl decorated her face. Gakushu halted at the door. Above it was a sign that was pridefully polished with the words, Student Council. Once the two entered, Gakushu set down the stack of books on the table. Hwayun slid the door shut with her foot. She was about to follow his lead and set down the stack on the table. That was until he turned to her with his arms prepared to take them from her. She observed his hands for a second with narrowed eyes. What are you staring at? Gakushu asked with a scowl. Nothing, just take these already. She scoffed as she took a step forward, staring down at the stack in her hands. He resisted letting out a sigh as he took the stack of books from her, accidentally making contact with her fingers. At that moment, both stiffened at the warmth that erupted from the touch. They both held the stack up, with Gakushu's knuckles touching the tips of Hwayun's fingers. Hwayun looked up at him, taking notice of how vibrant his colors seemed to be. His strawberry blonde hair that framed his face oh so perfectly appeared to be more vivid than before. His clear skin was free of any acne, which Hwayun was secretly envious of, seemed to glow a bit brighter, too. She couldn't help but get lost in his luminous violet eyes. On the other hand, Gakushu was carrying the majority of the weight of the stack. However, he was too distracted to notice. His eyes were busy scanning his soulmate's elegant face. Her skin-color skin seemed to gleam with the reflection of the sunlight that seeped through the windows. Eye-colored eyes were gawking at him in both shock and fascination. Her hair-color hair that looked silky and smooth to the touch. Both of them oddly felt hotter. It wasn't feverishly hot. It was just warm, like the heat of a fire burning on a fireplace in winter, or the heat that insulated underneath a blanket. Yet it was more emotional than that. It was similar to when they both saw color for the first time, but more intense and almost intoxicating. Whatever the feeling was, Gakushu had never experienced it before. Diversely, Hwayun had always rejected that feeling. Neither of them wanted to admit it, but they were both craving more of that warmth. Gakushu, wanting to be selfish, he found himself cupping his hands underneath hers. At the point, the weight of the books was non-existent. Hwayun tensed at the advancement of his hands that were noticeably larger than hers. At this point, her face was as hot as lava. Her mind suddenly took over and replaced those emotions with fear. I don't like this. In a defensive manner, she frantically pulled away her hands. Both of them went cold, and the colors returned back to normal. What are you doing? Gakushu could feel his heart drop at the tone of that question. She looked and sounded offended, despite the heavy, flustered expression on her face. Her eyebrows were furrowed, and she had taken a step back defensively. My apologies if I offended you, he stated. I didn't mean to. Do not touch me like that ever again. She sounded resentful. yet Gakushu could hear the terror lined in her voice. He didn't know how to respond to the hostility. All he did was mouth out words. Once that statement slipped from his lips, Wyan tensed. She ended up becoming even more flustered, but scowling deeper. The door slid open, revealing the drama teacher's first-year son that Wyan was well acquainted with, Akio Tsujimoto. He was holding a warm cup of coffee. Akio asked in awe, "Ellen, you're in the student council?" "Never. Never. Never." She cleared her throat, shooting Gakushu a glare. Gakushu set down the stack of books on the desk. Akio was blissfully unaware of what he had just interrupted. "Well, I'm glad I ran into you. Tsujimoto-sensei decided to treat the drama kids with drinks from the cafe nearby. She included you, too, and got you black coffee." The boy handed her the cup. Wyan took it into her hands. "How did you guys know I like black coffee?" "Hiromi and Takada," he explained with a grin. "And Akabane heard us talking about you, and said you were here." Gakushu was narrowing his eyes at the innocent first year. He felt like he was being ignored by both of them. "I see," Wyan hummed. "I'll be sure to thank her then." President Asano," Akio beamed. "Do you need help with anything?" "Not at the moment, but it is appreciated," Gakushu hummed, plastering a benevolent smile. "You are aware of the meeting after school, yes?" "Of course," Akio smiled. Wyan raised an eyebrow. "You're in the student council?" Akio nodded proudly. "Once Asano graduates, I plan to run for president as well." "You're not running next year?" Gakushu asked with a smile. "I could never run against you." Akio chuckled. "You would win by a landslide." "I could run against him," Wyan mumbled under her cup of coffee. "What was that?" Gakushu inquired. "Nothing." She coldly walked away and out the door. "I'll see you later, Akio." "Oh, okay." Akio trailed off, but looked at Gakushu with a naive smile. You two seem to be well acquainted." "I suppose that's one way to put it," Gakushu replied, thinking back to the situation from earlier. "How long have you known her for?" Akio asked. "We attended Kunikigaoka Junior High together." "Why are you asking?" Gakushu resisted narrowing his eyes at him. I'm sorry." Akio waved his hands at the taller male. "I didn't mean to pry. I was just curious. Ellen-senpai is just someone I admire, that's all." Gakushu felt a sharp pang. "Admire?" Not like that," the poor child clarified. "She's more of like, an older sister." "Oh?" "Well," Akio rubbed the back of his neck. "Among the popular students, say for you, she's seen as, a heinous bitch, or intimidating." "That's quite rude of them," Gakushu pointed out. "Yeah, I know," Akio added. "But she was really nice to me when school started, and all of the first years were just starting out. A lot of people weren't really interested in being friends with the son of one of the school's teachers. But Ellen helped me find friends, in my grade within the drama club. She was a bit stoic about it, but her intentions were really kind. The rumors about her aren't true, that she doesn't seem to care, either." Akio continued. "That's what I admire about her. She's a pretty good role model, if you ask me." Gakushu stared down at his hands. They were cold compared to the previous warmth when he was holding her hand in his. Perhaps he was too greedy just now. He resisted letting out a sigh and lowered his palms. He knew that none of the soulmate business would matter in the end. His love life was already sealed by a business contract. Meanwhile, Wyan had one hand shoved in the pocket of her skirt, sipping on her bitter-ass coffee. The drink was hot, but exceedingly different to the arguably terrifying warmth she had just felt when Gakushu held her hands. She was fine with being platonically touched, such as Kyo placing her hands on her shoulders earlier. However, with Gakushu it was different. It sent a shiver down her spine. At first, her heart seemed to savor the feeling, but when Gakushu advanced, her mind interrupted and screamed a warning at her. It told her to be cautious. She tricked herself into believing that whatever the feeling was, It was dangerous, and she needed to get away. This is stupid, she thought. I don't need romantic love to be happy, much less to survive. She took another sip of her black coffee with a scowl. I don't need a soulmate. Wayan! The hair-color-haired girl stepped off her bike as she prepared herself for the 3 toddlers that ran up to her. 2 boys and 1 girl had run out of the relatively large house that seemed to have a wide backyard. She picked up one of the boys. Rin, as the other 2, Haruhi and Kei, latched onto her legs. Ashiba barked at her and ran around her excitedly. Ayan, Yuan, and her grandma, Jiamen, stood at the door. The latter was cradling a tuxedo cat. I missed you, Ayan laughed. Haruhi especially, Yuan added. Wayan looked down at the little girl who was playfully hugging her leg. I visited last month, Wayan chuckled as she booped Rin's nose. She tried to move her legs, but they wouldn't budge. Well, you know they're at that age where they start questioning everything, Jiamen pointed out. Come on, Rin, Haruhi, Kei. Aunt Hina and your other cousins, Himiko, are going to be arriving soon. Ayan gestured to the triplets. Wayan set Rin down, and the triplets all ran back to their mother. After a while of preparation, such as cooking, Wayan played with the dog and the triplets in the backyard. There were chickens that stalked around a fence off the area, and a pair of ducks that fluttered away when the kids ran close to them. Her grandma warned them about trampling over the vegetable garden. Suddenly, a high-pitched squeal resounded from the entrance. Wayan! The girl whipped her head around. Aunt Hina! Wayan did some weird barefoot waddle-like run and hopped onto the wooden floorboards. Hina threw her arms around Wayan's shoulder, embracing her in a tight hug. You've grown so much! Hina gushed. You're so pretty, and this color, favorite color, looks so good on you. You haven't aged a bit, Auntie. Wayan beamed. Ugh, I never missed the smell of feathers and dirt. Wayan looked over Hina's shoulder, her face contorted into disgust. Well, aren't you just a ball of sunshine? She eyed her cousin, who was a year older than her. There's an uncanny resemblance between the 2 girls. There were a few differences. For example, Himiko had softer eye-colored eyes compared to the sharpness of Wayan's. They had the same hair-colored hair, but Himiko had cut hers to her shoulders. You're still a heinous bitch. Himiko, there are children. Sorry, Grandma. Soon, everyone filed into the living room. They held plates with food, placing them on the coffee table, in the between couches and armchairs. They had bright smiles on their faces. The house was loud with laughs and chatter. Wayan and Himiko sat as far away from each other as possible. Yuan popped open a bottle of red wine. Hina sat beside Wayan, holding 2 wine glasses. She watched as her uncle handed Hina the bottle of wine. You want a sip? Hina poured the red alcohol in the glass. Hold on, Ayan interrupted. She's only 17. Shh. Hina waved her off. Don't act like we didn't start drinking when we were 16. Ayan flushed. Well, oops, exposed. Wayan snickered. I'll have a little bit. Wait, Mom, Himiko complained. When I ask if I can try, you never let me. Because I'm concerned you won't be able to handle yourself, Hannah stated as she handed Wayan the half-filled glass. But I can. Tell me when you've passed your driver's ed. Hannah took a sip of her wine, and then I'll get back to you. Himiko pouted. Wayan took a sip of the bitter, alcoholic grape juice. The tuxedo cat, named Ripley, curled on Himiko's lap. In the mirror to the left of Wayan, Fate spoke. You should be nicer to your cousin. Wayan glanced at herself in the mirror while taking another drink. The dog, Mira, approached her wagging tail with glee. Fate sighed but disappeared from her reflection. Ding dong. Mira began to bark. Wayan could hear the chickens clucking from the backyard. I'll go see who it is. Yuan was about to stand up. I can do it. Wyan stood up faster and set down her glass at the coffee table. I need to go get some napkins anyway. Mira excitedly followed her to the front door. The hair-color-haired girl had a cheery smile on her face as she opened the door. It immediately disappeared as she gawked. Gakushu stood there, just as shocked as she was. You have got to be fucking kidding me. Dependent, troublesome, bratty. These were words that described Himiko Ellen. Well, at least Wyan described her that way. Wyan's eyebrows twitched. I have so many questions, but mostly, what the fuck? Gakushu mirrored her irritated expression. Why are you here? Bruh, I should be the one asking you that. She furrowed her eyebrows. My relatives live here? Are you stalking me? First of all, I'm not your bruh, he sighed. Second of all, I have no reason to stalk you, nor would I ever stalk someone in the first place. Uh-huh. She narrowed her eyes at him. One of my father's acquaintances and her daughter were supposed to arrive from America today. Gakushu explained. This was the address I'm supposed to meet them at. Wait, your father is here? Wyan looked to the car behind him, almost panicking. No. Gakushu answered. She breathed a sigh of relief. Anyway, you probably have the wrong address. See ya. Wyan, who's at the door? The said girl flinched as Hina approached from behind, still holding her glass of wine with one hand. Jiamen followed behind her with a concerned look. Hina gasped with delight at the sight of Gakushu. You must be Gakuho Asano's son. Asano? Jiamen gasped. Wyan, is that... No. And look who it is, Jiamen called out. Gakushu suddenly had a bad feeling about coming. Wyan was in the middle of contemplating death. Jiamen and Ayan had pushed Wyan aside from the doorway. Are you Wyan's soulmate? Both asked excitedly. I suddenly crave death. Wyan bit down on her tongue. Gakushu didn't know how to answer that question. He didn't want to admit that they were soulmates, but was he going to lie for no reason? Yes, he politely said, but I don't believe we should discuss this. He trailed off at the sight of Wyan's grandma and aunt squealing in delight. Wyan, you have a soulmate? Hina asked in awe. Unfortunately. I'm surprised you informed them about me. Gakushu pridefully smirked. Unfortunately. Wyan repeated, sounding a lot more grim than earlier. I did. Well, don't just stand there. Jiamen ushered. Come in. What? Wyan grimly asked. Suddenly, a plan started unfolding in Gakushu's head. He smiled. I suppose it wouldn't hurt. If he won the favor of Wyan's relatives, he imagined that he would be able to prove to Wyan that he was indeed better than her. Because of his craving to be at the top, he became slightly petty when it came to situations such as this. He found himself taking off his shoes and sitting in an armchair beside the end of the couch that Wyan sat at. He took notice of the cozy, welcoming feeling in the air. It wasn't the least bit formal, despite having wealthy relatives over. He observed the plates of food spread out on the medium-sized coffee table. It was extensively different from his household. Every meal would be served by a maid at a dinner table, never in a living room. The only people who lived in this house was him and his father. In comparison, this house was lively, with 9 people in it, 10 including himself. He noticed that no one excused themselves when they needed to quickly attend to something. Granted, they did come back within 2 minutes, but he still found it odd. When the white and black tuxedo cat hopped on his lap, he couldn't help but have a ghost of a smile linger on his lips, despite the fact that it was his soulmate's family. He felt comfortable with the casual atmosphere. It was a new, but accidental lesson from his father. one that he was willing to learn. When everyone's back was turned, Wine reached over for the bottle of wine and poured more of it into her glass. I'm gonna need a lot more than half of the glass to get through this. She took a long drink. Gakushu whispered to her, "Bold of you to be drinking in the presence of the student council president. Bold of you to assume I care." Wine said behind her cup, "The cat's name is Ripley, by the way." "I could have you suspended." Wine glared at him from the side. "I would rather not see you become an alcoholic and have liver problems at 17. He added. Wine smacked her lips and set down the glass. "You're being dramatic, but fine, since you seem to be so uncomfortable by it. Good girl." "Excuse me?" Wine asked, offended. Himiko returned from the bathroom. She raised an eyebrow at Gakushu. "And who is this tall drink of water?" "I'm gonna throw up because of you." Wine spat while Gakushu held back his own disgust. "A minor, and not yours. Now sit down." Hina scolded. "Ew, a minor. Never mind." Himiko waved him off. Gakushu was oddly relieved by that. Wine rolled her eyes as she picked up her plate of favorite food. She listened in on the conversation her relatives were having, which was about the triplets. In the corner of her eye, she saw Gakushu was not eating. She leaned over and whispered to him, "You know, you're being kind of rude right now." "By existing?" Gakushu raised an eyebrow. "Yes," Wine nodded. "But in this household, not eating is pretty rude." "I'm not hungry, though." He stated. "You're being impolite by not eating," Wine hummed. "Should I ask your aunt?" "No, you get your food on your own." "Would that not be intrusive?" "You don't need to ask. Help yourself and just get food." "I don't have a plate." Wine turned her whole head to him, tiredly gawking. "Are you serious right now?" "What do you mean?" Gakushu queried. "You're being such a baby right now," Wine said, rubbing her temple. "I'm not," he objected. She stood up, heaving another breath. "Come on." "Where are we going?" "To get the princess a plate," she stated as she led him to the kitchen. "Princess?" Gakushu always thought of himself as a king. He observed the relatively large kitchen, with an island counter in the middle. Ignoring his confusion, Wine pulled down the door of the dishwasher. "Do you not unload the dishwasher?" Gakushu squinted. "No." Wine handed him a clean ceramic plate. "There is literally no point in unloading the dishwasher. Instead, we use it as a place to store the dishes." "Is that to say, you use the dishwasher every night?" he inquired. "I live on my own, and I can't afford a dishwasher. Plus, I rent my apartment," she plainly answered. "But when I lived here, we only used the dishwasher on Fridays. Other than that, nope, hand wash." "So, you don't place the dishes in the cupboards?" "Why do you sound so disturbed?" She furrowed her eyebrows, handing him the plate. Gakushu glanced to the oven. "But you store pots and pans in the oven?" "Okay, listen here. You two are super close," Himiko interrupted as she filled a glass of water from the fridge. Then her eyes widened. "Oh my god, wait. Wyan, is that your boyfriend?" "No." Both Gakushu and Wyan answered at the same time, glaring at Himiko. Fine. Himiko shrugged. "I was just messing with you two. Honestly, I'd be worried if you said yes." "And why is that?" Gakushu asked. "Because I find it hard to believe that Wyan can keep a successful relationship with anyone." A sharp pang rang through Wyan. "Himiko, I will shove this chopstick down your throat and boil your teeth," she threatened, pointing the eating utensil at her. "You're always so violent and intimidating. No boy is gonna find you attractive, at all." Himiko hummed, taking a sip of her water. The older hair-color-haired girl left the kitchen, ignoring her cousin's frustrated scowl. "You two look alike," Gakushu pointed out. "No, we don't." She coldly protested and lightly jabbed the pair of chopsticks into his chest. The two teens went back to the living room and sat at their respective spots. "You better eat," Wyan commanded. "Is that a threat?" "Maybe." She took out her phone after determining that the conversation that the adults were having was boring. She opened up the group chat. The last time someone had texted was from a week ago. As she began to text, she would constantly glance over at Gakushu to make sure he wasn't looking. She deadpanned at the name of the chat. R.I.P. Koro-sensei 2K, never forget. Just now. Alright, which one of you fuckers decided to name the chat that? Maihara. I ain't snitching on my bros. Wifey. It was Sujino. Nakamura! When? The disrespect. Shaking my head. Sujino. It's what he would have wanted. Nagisa. I don't know about that. Guess who showed up to the family function? Pudding Cup. Who? Asano. Yoshida. Deadass? Deadass. Kanzaki. Praying for you. Sujino. F in the chat, boys. Kiara. F. Wifey. F. But also... Yoshida. F. Sugeya. F. Maratsu. F. Fuwa. F. Mahara. F. Pudding Cup. F. Itana. F. Okajima. F. Yuma. Hey guys, please don't spam the chat with F. Oh, hey Yuma, do you want to come over to get some eggs? Yuma. No thank you. Your aunt already came by in the morning and dropped off a basket. I tried to convince her to keep them, but she insisted. Pudding Cup. Egg. Literal Demon. Damn, you really can't get a break from Asano, can you? It's like he's starting to appear everywhere. Wifey. I wonder why. Pudding Cup. I wonder why. Why? Shut. Kiara. Well, what is he doing right now? Eating? Wait, actually, he's not eating. He just has food on his plate. Yuma. Isn't that kind of rude in your house? Yeah, I told him that. Maihara. The disrespect. Literal Demon. You poisoned his food yet? Sir... My family is also eating the food. Literal Demon. Some sacrifices must be made. Yuma. Karma! I know not. Wifey. Is he wrong though? Nagisa. Nagamura, don't encourage him. Literal Demon. No. Let her encourage me. Sujino. Why is he there? His dad is friends with my aunt. Yuma. The rich one who lives in America? Yep. Hayami. In any case, good luck not losing your mind. Karahashi. I don't really think you'll have a problem though, since you guys haven't really interacted in junior high. Wifey. Pudding Cap. Wifey. So, who's gonna tell him? No one. Mahara. Hold up. Tell him what? Literal Demon. Question mark. Fuwa. Spill. Itana. My guess is that they're somehow romantically involved with each other. Over my dead body! Fuwa. She really said bold font. Itana. In any case, you'd get farther than Tarasuke ever will in his love life. Actually, anyone might get farther than Tarasuke will. Tarasuke. You little shit. Itana. Okay. Wayne. Okay. Mahara. Okay. Muratsumi. Okay. Yoshida. Okay. Kiara. Okay. Itana. Question mark. Kataoka. Guys, the spam. Itana. Okay. Wayne. Okay. Mahara. Okay. Muratsumi. Okay. Okana. Stop. Literal Demon. Okay. Nagisa. Okay. Punika. Okay. Wifey. Okay. Hayami. Guess it's time to put this chat on mute once more. Kiba. Same. Tabayashi. As will I. Mumura. No wonder bitch sensei and Crossman sensei left LMAO. Mahara. Anyways, not to get political, but what the fuck is cheese? Itana. Yes. No. Heart. Nagisa. What? Image of Gakushu behind her, staring directly at the camera with a smug expression. Launch me into the sun, please. Shit, he caught me. Literal Demon. He's so ugly. Wifey. You guys look exactly the same, but aren't ready for that talk. I thought I was the only one. My wife never disappoints. Love, Wifey. Love you. Love you too. Literal Demon. We don't look alike, but next time you find a roach in your locker, don't blame me. Try me, ho. I eat roaches for breakfast. I fear nothing. Not even God. Pudding Cup. Ew, what? Crunch. Nagisa. Why, no. Wait, never mind. I recently learned I'm allergic to roaches. Literal demon. Weak ass. So you finally decided to take a picture of me. Gakushu pridefully hummed. Huh? Wine glanced at him. You've been stealing glances this whole time. I was going to recommend taking a picture. He smugly pointed out. Don't flatter yourself. Wine flapped her hand back and forth. You pointed out my disrespectful behavior. He started. Why shouldn't I be able to point out when you take a picture of me without my permission? You're still being rude, you know. She deadpanned. All you did was get food on your plate. Fine, I'll eat, he said. Wine pushed her phone back into the pocket of her dress. Meanwhile, Gakushu took a small bite of the plate from a favorite food that he had gotten. The flavor burst into his mouth and enraptured his sense of taste. He looked at Ayan with a benevolent smile. I must say, the favorite food tastes splendid. You're quite the chef. Wine looked away and rolled her eyes. Oh, you're sweet, but I didn't cook that. Ayan laughed. He's not sweet. Wine mumbled under her breath, staring at her nails. Wine did, Ayan added. Gakushu was taken by surprise, but directed his attention to his soulmate. Is that so? She began to timidly twirl her hair around a finger. No. Himiko quietly gagged from the opposite couch, earning a glare from Hina. Don't be rude, Himiko. Yes, she did, Ayan whispered to him with a wink. Gakushu noticed that she was looking away, attempting to hide her annoyance. She's not very good at hiding her emotions, he observed. Weh. Himiko stuck out her tongue. You see, Wyan is actually a sweetheart. Jiamin gushed behind Wyan while playing with her hair. I'm not. The girl huffed and crossed her arms. Do you want to see your baby pictures? Aunt Hina, no. Gakushu chuckled. I believe I'll have to pass. Wyan sunk into her spot as the three women began to dote about her to Gakushu. On the other hand, the strawberry blonde just took in the information he was receiving from her relatives. However, one question came to mind. Where are her parents? The absence of her parents was a curious topic. Unfortunately, he dared not to ask after what happened last time he mentioned her parents. For now, he'd just quietly take in and secretly enjoy the sight of a very flustered and irritated Wyan. Stop! She whined while her grandmother kept playing with her hair. You're embarrassing me! In the corner of his eyes, he noticed the unexpectedly quieter cousin's expression. Her arms were crossed with a scowl that her look was almost envious. On the stand beside her, Gakushu noticed that her phone was lighting up a lot. It was obvious that someone was very desperate to contact her. Zzz, zzz. His phone vibrated in his pocket. After taking it out, he saw that it was his father calling. He stood up with a slight bow. Please excuse me for a moment. My father is calling. It's all right. You can go in the backyard if you would like, Jiamen suggested, pointing to the back door. I appreciate it. Gakushu nodded and left with his phone in hand. Once he was gone, Wine immediately picked up a glass of wine. Thank God. She brought the glass to his lips as Himiko asked, Who even is that guy? I thought I told you not to be rude, Himiko. Hina scolded. He's Gakuho Asano's son. Wine felt a shiver down her spine at the name, still sipping from the glass. And he's Wine's soulmate, Hina added. So show some respect. Himiko's scowl turned into a deadpan. He's your soulmate? Unfortunately, Wine hummed with a sigh. You of all people have a soulmate? Himiko sardonically chuckled. Don't make me laugh. Wine raised an eyebrow, moving the glass from her lips. Girls? Ayan warned, not liking where this was going. Got a problem with it, Himiko? Wine narrowed her eyes at her cousin. As a matter of fact, yes, I do. And thus began an icy argument. Outside, Gakushu left the door cracked, just a bit, and stepped to the side of the glass door, so that he couldn't be seen. He answered the call and brought the phone to his ear. Yes, hello, father? Asano-kun. Hummed on the other line. How's the meeting coming along? Gakushu glanced at the door. It's coming along quite all right. The Ellen family has invited me to eat dinner with them, and so I have. That reminds me, Gakuho added, I believe you would know Hina's niece, Wayan Ellen. She attended Kunigigaka Junior High and stole your top spot with Akabane, did she not? As a matter of fact, Gakushu leaned to look through the glass. He was tempted to sigh at the sight of Wayan drinking her alcohol once more. She happens to be my soulmate. In recent days, he would no longer grimace at the fact, but he would still find it a minor inconvenience. After the arguably awkward situation from the other day, it was hard for him to deny that feeling of having her hands in his was pleasant. You just made my heart race. Gakushu pressed the pads of his fingertips to his forehead, turning pink, and trying to forget that those words had actually rolled off of his tongue. It was humiliating. However, he didn't realize how unintentionally endearing those words sounded until after he had even mouthed them out. It was true. The feeling of skin contact not only brought intense warmth, but it made his heart pound in his chest. As a matter of fact, she is here, Gakushu repeated, still trying to cover his face. She's in my class at Kunigigaka High as well. He made eye contact with one of the ducks that roamed the backyard freely. The duck and him had a quiet stare down, making Gakushu lower his hand. However, his face was still dusted with pink. He finally scowled at the bird as if to say, What are you looking at? Quack. Are you still there? Gakuho called out. Yes, I am. Gakushu's eyebrows twitched. How dare this mere bird mock him? He cleared his throat after realizing how ridiculous that thought was. If it matters, your mother was actually quite good friends with her in high school, Gakuho informed. She would have been my first choice as your fiancé. However, due to certain circumstances, she is no longer available. Gakushu almost choked at that news. His mother knew her mother? How come neither of them knew? Was it a coincidence, or did fate plan that on purpose? Either way, if his soulmate ended up being his fiancé, maybe his life would have been easier. Maybe. May I ask what changed? Gakushu inquired. Does the topic matter? Gakuho mused. You haven't taken an interest in the girl, have you? No. The boy's gaze hardened at the duck. I am only inquiring, as she is one of my pawns at school. Gakushu did not like how those words rolled off his tongue with ease. Gakuho laughed, but it was as dry as a desert. I'm only jesting. Perish the thought of you actually falling for someone, correct? Of course. Gakushu plastered a smile on his face. On second thought, I will wait for her to tell me herself. It would be a sign that I've gained her trust. You just have to do everything, don't you? He became alarmed at the sudden voice of the older Ellen cousin. With an eyebrow raised, he peeked through the glass once more. Himiko was standing beside with her fists clenched and a furious expression. She sneered directly at Wayan, whose wine glass was now only a quarter full. Hina and Ayan both had scowls on their faces. Jimin and Yuan had exasperated expressions as if to say, Here we go. Meanwhile, the triplets were listening curiously. His loving soulmate was hiding an irritated smirk behind the glass. Knowing her, there was a 50-50 chance she had said something snarky. I suppose you should be getting back to your dinner with the Ellens, Gakuho spoke, unaware of the drama in the background. Enjoy yourself. However, do be home by 8 o'clock. If you could inform Hina Ellen that my meeting with her can be delayed for tomorrow instead, that would be perfect. All right, goodbye. After his father hung up, Gakushu didn't lower his phone. His intuition was telling him that if he walked right back into that house, the situation would end up being even more awkward than it already was. Poor guy already had one too many awkward moments with Wayan. He did not need a moment with her entire family. Instead, he pretended to continue to be on the phone and wait patiently for the drama to stop. Care to tell me why it's your business, Himiko? Wyan asked. Wyan, stop it, Ayan warned. The hair-color-haired girl bit down on the edge of the glass. She wasn't even drinking anymore. She was just trying to hide the obvious annoyance on her face. No, Wyan narrowed her eyes at her cousin. I don't understand why it's such a big deal to her. It matters to me because everyone here is always doting on you. Himiko spat. You just had to make today all about you, didn't you? But the only reason why everyone here gives you attention is because your parents are dead. Wyan felt something snap as she continued to bite down into the edge of the glass. Finally, she tilted the glass up and finished the rest of the wine. Huh? She raised an eyebrow. Gakushu came into realization. So, her parents passed away. Is this true? He suddenly felt like he was watching a soap opera. Himiko, sit down, and Hana's voice raised. So, this is where we were going with this, huh? Wyan hummed, standing up with clenched fists. Wyan, don't. Jiamin spoke up. Believe me, I'm not going to do anything right now, considering there are toddlers around. Wyan continued. But there's a lot of crap I could say about you, although I think I can say this. Which is? Himiko crossed her arms. Wyan? Ayan glared. A smile curled onto her lips. It's tough talk for someone whose daddy didn't even want her. At least both of my parents loved me. Wyan! Ayan exclaimed. Take that back! Himiko shouted. As if. Wyan snorted. My father has nothing to deal with any of this. Himiko stated. My parents had nothing to deal with this either, yet you're the one who mentioned them first. Wyan pointed out. As the bickering continued, and began to escalate into a heated argument, Gakushu felt like he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, as he watched the two girls ignore the two tired aunts who were standing, he dipped back to the side of the door when he noticed Jiamin walking toward the door. He continued to pretend he was still on the phone as it slid fully open. The old lady stepped out, holding a small plate with cubed slice of melons on it. She chuckled as she fully shut the door behind her. You can stop pretending to be on the phone. Jiamin giggled. I may be old, but I saw you peeking through the door. Gakushu dipped his head slightly. My apologies for eavesdropping. No need to apologize. I should be the one who apologized for my grandchildren. Believe it or not, they used to be inseparable as kids. Jiamin sat down on the wooden floorboard of the deck, patting the spot beside her. Care to have a conversation with an old lady? The strawberry blonde gave her a curious look. He didn't want to sit on the floor, but he supposed he had no other choice. Once he sat down, Jiamin handed him the plate of melon. Melon? No, thank you. Gakushu kindly refused. Don't be shy. Jiamin laughed, gesturing toward the plate. Eat. Not eating is pretty rude. Wyan's voice echoed in his head as he held back a sigh. He received the plate from the wrinkly hands of the old lady, picked up the little wooden stick, and ate a piece of melon. The fruit was sweet on his tongue as he chewed. I'm sure you're aware of this, but Wyan was not too happy to find out you were her soulmate, Jiamin stated, observing the duck that wandered the yard. Of course I'm aware, Gakushu replied. She's made that quite obvious. Multiple times, to be honest. I hope you don't take it personally, though. A frown replaced her previous expression. During her second year, months before she found out, she suddenly became bitter towards anything that had to do with relationships. What do you mean? He asked. He wasn't really interested, but he was only trying to gain her trust by listening to what she had to say. Whenever we asked her about any crushes, she would be visibly frightened and angry. She answered, We don't know why, though, but she would always dismiss us when we asked why. Gakushu found himself thinking back to the other day, the way she had defensively tore away her hands from his. It left his hands feeling empty, but heavy. Maybe that was because of the weight of the textbooks, but it was an odd feeling. Don't ever touch me again. There was so much fear and anger in her voice, yet that didn't stop him from mouthing out the words. "You just made my heart race." Just as he did earlier, he tried to hide the embarrassment. "I think Wayne likes to say that it is you and she doesn't like you." Jimin's new frown grew. "But I don't think it's the case at all. I think she's just afraid for some reason." "If I may ask, why are you telling me all of this?" Gakushu inquired. "I just thought you should know," Jimin reassured. "It's not a personal thing." With all due respect, I don't really care if it's a personal reason or not," Gakushu clarified. "We both agreed that being soulmates isn't what either of us asked for, and even if we did, due to my own personal circumstances, it would not work out very well." "Is that so?" Jaemin chuckled dryly. "It's not that I want to change your mind about that. I've tried convincing Wayne, and believe me, it's not easy. I just hope, that she is truly a very kind girl, and she tries not to be. She's sensitive. Sometimes I think she's too independent for her own good." "May I ask how her parents died?" he wondered. Jimin's smile turned grim as she thought about her late son and daughter-in-law. "I would tell you, but I think that's something for you to ask her." "I see." Meanwhile, Wayne and Himiko were both hit on the back of the head with house slippers. "Ow! Ow!" "What was that for?" Wayne rubbed the back of her head. "Both of you need to cut it out," Ayan scolded. "Wayne, by saying that to Himiko, you aren't just taking a shot at her, you're taking a shot at Hina as well." "You too, Himiko," Hina told her daughter. "Effin and Emin were your family as well. Don't you remember how they raised you as well?" Both of the girls went quiet, with scowls on their faces. "Honestly, it's hard to believe that you two were inseparable years ago," Ayan scoffed. "Now, you just act like you aren't even family." "From now on, you two need to learn to get along," Hina added. "But she started it," Wayne pointed out. "How old are you to be pointing fingers like that?" Ayan scowled. "Both of you are around the same age, so act like young adults, please." Himiko let out a scoff and crossed her arms. Wayne rolled her eyes. "Whatever." Wayne flopped her hand and walked off toward the back door. "I'm gonna get some air." "Wayne!" The glass door abruptly slid open, slightly, startling Gakushu and Jimin. I forgot you were out here." Wayne sighed at Gakushu. Don't be like that, Wayne." Jimin gushed. "Asano-kun and I were just having a nice conversation." "About?" Wayne raised an eyebrow. "You," Gakushu mumbled. Wayne heaved a sigh once more, sliding the door behind her. "Oh, gee. I hope she didn't say anything embarrassing about me." "All good things," Jimin hummed. "Right, Asano-kun?" "Of course." Gakushu nodded benevolently. Wayne plopped down on the other side of her grandma, leaving the old lady in between her and her soulmate. There was an awkward silence between the three. Jimin twiddled her fingers and stood up. "Well, I'll leave you two be." "Wait, what?" Before Wayne could finish, Jimin was already back inside. Wayne groaned. "She's too energetic for her age." "How so?" Gakushu inquired, right after swallowing a piece of melon. "She's 76, and she takes Zumba classes." "The fitness dancing program?" "Yep." Wayne chuckled dryly. As the girl leaned back on her palms, the light of the orange sunset left a soft glow on her face. "You heard everything, didn't you?" Wayne asked quietly. Gakushu was almost surprised by how soft her voice went. "Yes, I did." It was silent between the two of them once more. Gakushu felt a sense of déjà vu. It was very similar to that time in the infirmary room. "How did your parents pass?" Gakushu tensed. "I'm sorry?" "I pass." Wine nonchalantly stated, leaning her head to the side. I don't want to answer that question right now. I see. Gakushu nodded. Either way, I'm sorry for your loss. Wine didn't know how to respond to that. Thanks, I guess, but they died 7 years ago. Gakushu left that topic at that. Fate pressed their fingerprints to their forehead. Bloody hell! Why can't these two have a single proper conversation with each other? Why did you two get into an argument? Gakushu inquired. Wine flushed and looked away. I pass. Gakushu smirked and raised an eyebrow. You can't pass on 2 questions in a row. She scoffed. It was nothing. 2 young adults getting into an argument like that over nothing? Gakushu pressed. That's quite embarrassing, even for someone of your caliber. What the hell do you mean by my caliber? Wine fumed. It's humiliating to see you argue like a toddler. Gakushu added. Okay, fine, I got it. It's embarrassing, jeez. Wine sighed and said in a very quiet and meek voice. I might have said you're just mad that I have a soulmate and you don't, or something along those lines. Oh, so you bragged about me? I did not. In simpler terms, you did. Gakushu pridefully straightened his posture. I didn't think you'd ever admit to having someone as great as I am as your soulmate. Shut up. Wine fussed, avoiding eye contact. Do my ears deceive me, or is that a stutter I heard? Your ears deceive you. Fate laughed with a sigh of relief. That's more like it. Gakushu couldn't help but chuckle. It was hard for him to deny the fact that she was adorable when she was flustered. Is there a reason why she would get worked up about that? Gakushu pondered out loud. Honestly, I don't even know. She acts like she doesn't get attention, but Wine sighed. She has everything I don't, so I don't know what her problem is. Gakushu glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. For some reason, he hated hearing those words from her. It was obvious that she had what he didn't. A relatively large family that was accepting and outgoing. That wasn't to say he wanted that. It was just something he found interesting. It was the complete opposite of his family. How so? Gakushu looked back at the plate in his lap. It still had a good amount of pieces of melon on it. Well, for one thing, she's pretty. Wine started. What? He was taken aback by how plainly she stated. What's with that reaction? She scowled. Gakushu caught himself before he finished saying that. He felt his face warm up. You're what? She raised an eyebrow, but then it hit her. Were you about to say I'm pretty? Absolutely not. He scowled. You're decent. That's it. What? Aw. Wine pouted. Anyway, yeah, she's pretty. In fact, she's a model in America from what I know. She's also rich. She has a mom who's alive. Gakushu felt that last one. But, yeah, Wine trailed off, leaning forward and placing her palms on her knees. She pursed her lips, not really knowing where to take this conversation. Quack! Gakushu once more narrowed his eyes at the duck. I don't believe that duck likes my presence. Well, I don't really like your presence either, so... Wine hummed, looking away from him. Might want to watch your ankles, though. What do you mean? Gakushu flinched and lifted his foot. The duck just tried to pinch him with its bill. Wine snorted. I raised that duck from an egg. Now it makes sense. He sighed, crossing his legs. He was still holding the plate of melon slices. Wine heard something ceramic set down beside her. She glanced at the plate, watching Gakushu slide the plate her way. Have some, he stated, not making eye contact with her. No thanks. Wine shook her head. I'm good. He raised an eyebrow. Weren't you the one who said that not eating was being disrespectful? Yeah, but... She turned her head to face him, only to find him with a smirk plastered on his lips. But, he questioned. I hate you. Wine huffed as she picked up a tiny wooden stick, poked it into the slice of fruit, and ate it. Gakushu hummed in response. I know you do. Hi everyone, so this did take a lot longer than I expected it would, but I hope you enjoy. I'm gonna go edit this. Yeah, have an amazing morning, have an amazing evening, have an amazing afternoon, whenever you're listening to this, and I will see you guys, probably in a few hours. Okay, yeah, goodbye everyone, I love you.